to the Inspire Wealth podcast with Prof, where we dive into the world of real estate investing and wealth building strategies. I'm your host, Mallory Meehan. I'm a real estate professor, attorney, and seasoned investor here to guide you through the ins and outs of creating wealth through real estate. If you're looking to take your real estate knowledge to the next level, don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with our latest episodes and offerings. Welcome back to another episode of Inspire Wealth. I am your host, Prof, and today I am joined by Adam Rosen. Adam, welcome to the show.
Mallory, thank you for having me.
Adam, so before we dive in, I would love for you to just kind of give us an overview of your background. And I think what's going to be really cool about this episode is that we're going to talk just entrepreneurship as a whole, not necessarily only focusing on real estate, because I think there's a lot that goes into that. And you are kind of like the quintessential person to be speaking on this topic. So tell us a little bit of background about you and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so the quick 90 seconds of it, if I can keep it to 90 seconds, was I never even knew what the word entrepreneur meant. Growing up, in college, I was grateful though to take an entrepreneurship class from a great professor, just like you are a great professor, who wasn't just teaching, she was also acting on her teachings. And what I mean by that is she was actually an entrepreneur. And it got me really excited about the world of entrepreneurship. I was able to start an entrepreneur program at my university. And basically, once I did, I was hooked. And I said, I don't know what I want to start, but I want to start a business. And after a one-year MBA where I continued leading that program, I decided to start what ended up being my first tech startup about 3 weeks before graduating. That led to, again, my first tech company. I had that company for about 5 years. I sold that company in 2019. And there was a lot of highs and probably a lot more lows in that story. So a lot of good times of getting my butt kicked, which, maybe we'll talk about on this podcast. Yeah. But one of the things that we always did exceptionally well was getting some of the biggest brands in the world as customers, from Amazon to Apple, Goldman, Disney. And it wasn't from having connections in the space. It was just from getting scrappy and just cold emailing them to get on meetings. So, cold email was a huge avenue for us. And that led me to then starting a real estate company after that, working on a few big real estate developments, to then starting my current company, which is an email marketing agency, which I've had for the last 4 years, where we help startups all the way up to big Fortune 500s to get more customers through the power of cold email.
That's amazing. I love that. That's an awesome journey. Okay, so I want to break this down a little further. So your first company, give us a little bit of background as to what your thought process was in creating that, kind of what your techniques were for getting people associated with Amazon, CBRE, Disney, all of those big name companies. How were you able to do that?
Well, in terms of kind of what we did and then parlaying that into how we got some of those big brands, was for us, we were always a big believer that the best students, the most passionate students, the students that were most sought after within a college campus tend to be in student groups. So from real estate clubs to entrepreneurship clubs, engineering clubs, those were the students that were going above and beyond outside the classroom to better themselves professionally. So the platform we created was a technology where we had over 100,000 student organizations that would sign up to raise money and to get jobs. So as we were building that side of the marketplace, we were going to the other side of the marketplace, approaching some of those brands you mentioned earlier to say, hey, do you want to recruit these students through their student affiliations? So for us, it was just about let's email people who we think might be the buyer at these companies. Because again, we didn't really know. I was, 22, 23, starting the company as a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, young man just out of college. So we just were emailing a bunch, talking to a bunch of people, seeing what value they saw in what we did or what value they would want to see. And we built the product and alongside getting the customers on board.
That's great. So for your kind of like profit central, were you able to make money both on your end users as well as your primary users? So like, were you able to charge something for the students and then also charge something from the companies?
So we actually paid the students. So yeah, so that was our user acquisition cost. So for student groups at colleges, what we kept hearing was their two biggest needs as a group was, one, they wanted jobs and internships for their members. And number two, they need to make money. And they need to make money so they can, go to India to build bridges or to to send their members to a robotics competition halfway across the country, or to host events that can drive more membership. They need money to do so, but getting money was difficult. So what we did is we would make it so student groups can make money. And the way they would make money is by having more of their members sign up on our platform and fill out surveys. So our customers like Bank of America, Amazon, Apple, Goldman, Disney, they would pay us to host surveys on our platform that the students would complete. And then, of course, also to get jobs. So we actually kept it free for the students where they actually could make a lot of money. We gave over $300,000 to student groups across the country.
Wow.
Yeah, and then companies would use us to recruit those students.
That's amazing. And that really serves a need. I think it's, commendable for you guys to think of something like that is not charging students because we all know that students are on a very limited budget and instead actually paying them to contribute to your business. So you kind of saw all of the needs of the client as well as of the end user. So really, really cool. So you had that company for, you said 5 years. Is that right?
Yeah, from inception to selling is about 5 years total.
So what kind of like walk me through some of the startup costs or some of the challenges that you had in the beginning years of developing and designing this company?
The biggest challenge, and this goes for any company, and it's even a challenge for my current business, is how do you get to product market fit? That is the number one thing that every business owner needs to get to is getting to product market fit. And it doesn't happen in 3 months. Typically doesn't happen in 3 years. For a lot of companies, they never get to true product market fit between them creating the company and selling the company. Like product market fit, I don't think people realize how difficult that is. And I realize that just when I speak to some founder CEO types of very large companies where they're like, I don't feel like we've truly cracked product market fit at this stage either. So it's the number one thing that any company needs to get to is cracking the code of true product market fit. And for me, I always just think about really three things when starting a business is just one, how do you make money? And are you making money? Are you bringing on new customers? Are you keeping those customers on board or do they keep churning away? And then three, is it profitable? Now, I think the old days of when I was running my first startup, I would hear people constantly in the space saying red is the new black. Just keep losing money, burning money. Who cares? You'll end up just raising more capital or selling the business and then you'll be okay. And it never made sense to me at the time. And
Mm-mm.
now my current business is bootstrapped and I love it. I encourage every entrepreneur, if you can, please bootstrap. Please bootstrap for a million different reasons. It is so much nicer than raising capital. And most businesses should never raise capital. But again, the getting to profitability is so important. Don't just think about passing the buck down the line because you have to get to profitability at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how do you tell companies or explain to companies how they can identify their product and market fit?
Well, a lot of product market fit, the way I see it, is can you get new customers? That's a piece of it. But you can almost put a band-aid on product market fit just because you're a good salesperson. Anybody can sell a dream to somebody just to get them on board. But if they just buy once and they don't buy over and over and over again, that means that your product clearly isn't suiting them. So for me, a much better indicator of product market fit is not just do they buy once, but do they continue to buy over and over and over again. That's why getting the long renewals or getting month over month payments, getting multi-year contracts, that's why that is so important as a business because anyone can sell someone a dream once, but are they buying again and again and again?
Now, how would you suggest people look at this if they have, let's say, a product that's kind of a one off product that once somebody has it, they wouldn't need to purchase it again?
So let's talk through an example. Do you have an example on top of mind that we could walk through?
I mean, like an online education class, let's say, because you're not going to need to buy it again. So, what could somebody do if they had, something along those lines?
Well, a couple things on that. Number one, if I had an online education class, I would also be thinking about what other ancillary value could I offer to someone after they complete the course. So are they upgrading after that or they continue to work with us in another way? So that would be one thing is trying to create more products because if someone bought from you once and they really liked it, well, what's something else that I could sell to them because they probably have a great trust for you and they'd rather work with you again versus somebody else in the space. And I'm sure there's another need that they now have after they complete your course. So that would be one. Number two, I would be looking at referrals. what percentage of the people that bought your course refer somebody else? And then you can incentivize them to do referrals. We did a lot of incentivizing my first tech startup on referrals. And that was the number one way we would drive new student club signups aside from our cold emailing that we were doing to drive it. And then number three is the line out the door. How many people are buying your product, even if it's just a first time purchase? How frictionless is it for you to get those sales, and are your sales growing month over month? Because they should be, right? Like, the more you figure out your marketing, the more you learn about your market, the more your sales should continue to rise. So those would be the three things I'd be looking at if you do sell more of a one-off product.
Awesome. So you mentioned that you recommend bootstrapping. And so give us some ideas as to how new entrepreneurs might be able to get a business up and going through their own means and not need to worry about raising capital.
Most businesses don't require a lot of capital to start. Like, very few businesses actually do. And there was a period for about 3 years, I taught a class to entrepreneurs where it was about 300 plus small business owners that I ended up teaching over the course of a couple of years. They're an amazing program. So many of them were like just really nice people that had some tech startups, most of which were like a bike shop you'd see on Main Street. And I would always ask the question when we got to the raising capital class,
Mhm.
what percentage of you want to raise money? And almost everyone's hands would go up. And I would tell them, just about every one of you that raise your hand has no business raising capital. It's going to do a lot more damage to you. And the story I would always tell is a story of a company called FanDuel. I don't know have you heard of FanDuel?
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you know the story about their founders?
I know it a little bit, but why don't you tell me again?
Yeah, essentially, like, it's a wildly successful company. They sold for over $500 million. And I would always ask, how much money do you think the founders made from this acquisition? And look, I don't know the exact number because, the legal stuff afterwards, because there was some stuff going on. However, the last public information was this founders made zilch, zero, nada, nothing. They sold the company that they started for over $500 million. You would think these guys were set, their families were set, their friends were set, everyone is set for generations to come because of that exit that any entrepreneur would dream of. But they didn't make any money because of how they raised their capital. So it can be a very dangerous thing when you raise capital too early, in a difficult way of you making money. Versus a bootstrap company, my business partner and I, we do finance Fridays. Every Friday, we go through an hour and a half, 2 hours of all of our financials. And one of those things we go through is how much we're going to pay ourselves that day, that week. And if there's $1 in the account, I'm taking 40 cents. He's taking 40 cents. We're keeping 20 cents in there for our expenses that we need to handle. But that's what you have the benefit of when you're a bootstrap company. When you raise capital, you don't. So anyway, that's number one, is just not thinking you need to raise capital, because most businesses don't require capital, especially in the beginning when you're just figuring this stuff out. So that's what I would say. And then just minimizing your expenses in the front end as you're getting to product market fit, because you really don't know when you're starting. Like, when I started this company, we had no idea what to charge, what softwares to use, any of that stuff. So we kept it really tight for the first 9 months as we were figuring out what the heck this business was even going to be, if it was going to be anything.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. Okay, so you sold your first business and then you took the proceeds and invested it in real estate. What drew you to real estate, and what was that experience like?
So when I sold my first company, when I was selling it, I should say, I moved out to Hawaii. That was my first time to get away from the Northeast and go into live in a totally different area. I tried a bunch of different things, and then I happened to be in New York just visiting my mother. And my business partner for my first tech startup, who's also my current business partner, just called me. He's like, "Hey man, if you're open to it, my father has this real estate development. It's beautiful land development project in New York and upstate New York on the Hudson River. He hired this sales firm to sell it out for them, but they're doing a terrible job. Would you be open to it?" And I said, "No way, no shot. I'm going back to Hawaii. I'm not doing this. I'm not going into the woods to sell real estate. I'm good." Thought about it more. Long story short, I ended up in upstate New York to learn about an industry I knew nothing about, like nothing, zero zilch, nada about real estate. So I went up there, helped sell out that development. Went well. We ended up buying a development then in Vermont afterwards. So it was a few multi-million-dollar real estate developments where I got to cut my teeth and really learn about land development, real estate, and a new side of sales versus what I was doing. So it was an amazing experience, I should say, for me.
That's great. So you then kind of transitioned back into being an entrepreneur on your own after the sale of those two acquisitions. Is that correct?
Yeah, during that, I was one of the tech startups that I was advising because I continued to do other work with entrepreneurs. Throughout that time, I was teaching a class, multiple classes, I should say. I was advising different tech startups. And one of those tech startups I was advising just called me up. He was like, hey, man, we're struggling to get meetings on the books. Can you help? I said, yeah, sure. Let me talk to your head of sales. I talked to his head of sales and I realized they were really doing nothing from an email standpoint. And I saw there was a big gap of what we could do for him. So I called up my co-founder again of my previous tech startup. I explained what I was going to be doing for this tech company, and he said, "Oh, it's funny you say that. The company that bought our first tech startup has been asking me to do the same thing for them." So we started building out the first version of email outreach company with a few different beta customers, and then yeah, we ended up going all in on it.
I love it. Okay. So now you have this email out. Tell me again what the name of the company is.
Yeah, email outreach company.
Email outreach company. Okay. So what year did you start that?
Officially in 2021, so around June of 2021 is when we brought on our first customer.
Okay. So tell me how that company kind of, started, maybe some of the challenges that you ran in from there. And then I want to learn more about what it is that you offer because I think it's a really cool tool for any entrepreneur.
Yeah, the key was, what I was saying earlier in terms of like that tech startup that was like, hey man, we need help with sales. So that was really the founding of it. And they were ended up being our first customer. It was like, hey, let's build this thing out for you. We had no idea what to charge, so we just kind of threw something out there. They're like, yeah, it sounds good. Then we brought on two other customers. One of those customers was my sister, who at the time was starting her business. She was leaving Spotify, where she was their youngest global salesperson. She ended up, basically begging me to become a customer. I said, yes, but you're going to pay. We're not going to give you a freebie just because you're my sister. So she was one of three beta customers that we tested it with for 9 months.
Mm,
And the key was because of, the ass kicking that we got during our first tech startup, my business partner and I were like, look, let's make this business drag us. We're not going to drag this thing. Like if it's meant to be, great. If it's not meant to be, that's great too. No worries.
mhm.
So the first 9 months was just testing, throwing things against the wall, making mistakes, anything you can imagine with these three beta customers before we're like, all right, let's see if we can grow this thing and get the fourth customer, fifth customer, etc. So yeah, that was the beginning origin of it. And now we've worked with over 150 customers, including some of the biggest brands in the world, like Fortune 500s.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about more on what it is that your company does. Like, what does it solve, and how can we, as entrepreneurs, move into using it?
Every business is only as good as your top of funnel. If you have meetings with potential customers, you have hope. If you don't, you are scrambling. It's really as simple as that. If we don't have meetings that day, we are just scrambling. What should I do today?
Mhm.
And the truth is, none of it really matters. What matters is talking to your buyers, talking to your customers, getting them on board, and then finding a value you can serve to them. It's really that simple. So for us, we know how to use email to get you on more calls with your potential customers. So for us, we work with some early stage startups to basically build their email infrastructure, help them with deliverability, copy, lists, etc., to help them run it on their own. And then we work with other companies where they just say, look, we don't know what we're doing with email. We don't want to do anything with it. Just get me on meetings and we handle everything end to end to book the meeting. They show up to the meeting, they make the sale. But it's all through just the power of leveraging email to drive more business.
I love that. So let's do a case study and let's walk through something. So I told you earlier that I've recently bought a business and it's a parking lot maintenance company. So explain how I could go through your service to identify potential end users or decision makers who would be the ones in charge of, the maintenance on their parking lots.
Yeah. So first I would ask is what does your ideal customer profile look like? Who is your ICP?
So Typically, it's property management companies or school districts, local government, maybe churches, other nonprofits, large retail centers, anything like that.
So first thing that's great is your universe is big. Now, what's your radius? Like what's your location radius of who you'd be working with?
It's about a 60-mile radius of State College.
Perfect. So the nice thing about that too is there's plenty of, especially with Philly being so close by, like there's a big market to go after. So let's even just stick with property managers. I would go into even a simple tool like Apollo or Instantly are inexpensive ways to build out lists. And what you could do there is you could build out a list based on property managers and in that specific location. And then I would download that list, I'd scrape that list, and then I run them through an email campaign to book a meeting with them. So I would imagine your sales process is getting on, I don't know, 15-minute call, 15-minute Zoom to try to convince them of why they should be working with you. Is that right?
I think the goal is to actually meet them in person at their actual site to give them a proposal so that they can actually see what our services would cost and kind of give them the overview of why they want to work with us.
So that's a great call to action. It's typically a tougher call to action meeting in person off of a first email, but it certainly works. So yeah, you would either say let's chat for 15 minutes or let's meet and I'll bring some coffee and donuts to your office and we can walk through this stuff. But the nice thing about your audience is you can easily get that contact information. Now the trick though is how do you land in their inbox? Because cold email today versus cold email when I first started cold emailing in 14, 15, 16 is night and day.
Mm-hmm.
So just for example, when we were cold emailing for my tech startup, we would send sometimes thousands of emails a day from our primary domain, and that was no problem. You can land in the inbox, you can write one good piece of copy, you could just personalize the first name, no worries at all. For the first 2 years of running this agency, you could almost get away with that. You shouldn't email off your main domain. It's too risky for a number of reasons, but you could get away from emailing from a few different inboxes, sending a few thousand emails a day without doing much personalization. Over the last year and a half, though, the cold email world has been turned on its head. So for context, some of our biggest customers, we're emailing from over 1,500 inboxes. And the reason why is because Google and Yahoo and Microsoft and all these providers have gotten incredibly strict about what they allow in the inbox versus spam. So the infrastructure that you need to have set up, if you want to do any type of outbound emailing, is much greater and much more complex than it's ever been. So from the infrastructure that you need to have to the copy that you need to create, you have to do it in a certain way that avoids the spam filter and helps you land in the inbox.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge too, because if I'm talking with students who are trying to get into real estate for the first time, I think cold calling has always been one of those things. And it's the same trouble is that, your phone gets marked as spam or, people just are hesitant to answer their phone these days. And so email sometimes is the best point of contact, but how do you actually get to somebody and, have them recognize it as not being spam?
Yeah, there's really three things everyone needs to think about when it comes to getting results through email. And by the
Okay.
way, I hear all the time, like, does cold email still work? Is it dead? And what I always tell people is like, look, yeah, it is dead. It doesn't work. You're right. If you don't know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge is today, you have to do A through Z right in order to get results. In the old days, you had to do A, B, and C right to get results. So that's the biggest difference. But if you can do it right now, like cold email has never been more exciting. It's never been better than it is today if you can do everything right. There's really three things everyone needs to think about. The goal is always to get to email market fit. So kind of like product market fit. In the email world, it's email market fit. So how do you get your message to resonate with the right person at the right time? How do you do that? So there's really three things. Number one is deliverability market fit. Landing in the inbox, like I said earlier, is harder than ever. And one of my favorite quotes is you can't hit what you can't see. So if you don't land in the inbox, they're not going to see it. You're not going to get a meeting. So number one is deliverability. Number two is copy market fit. How do you write high performing copy? not to get too nerdy here, but anyone who wants to get in the weeds and enjoys that stuff, you'll probably appreciate it. At the very least, when you are cold emailing, you have to use something called Spintax, Spintax. And basically, what that does is it randomizes copy. So every email looks slightly nuanced. So, for example, if I'm emailing, Mallory and Jennifer and Samantha, I might say, "Hi, Mallory." I might say, "Hello, Jennifer." I might say, "Hey, Sam." And then throughout the email, there's minor nuance throughout. The reason for that is to bypass some of the spam filters. However, Google, Yahoo, Microsoft, etc., are getting better at analyzing Spintax. So the best way to get results is to use tools like Clay and tools like Octave, which are very difficult tools to learn. I'm not going to lie. However, if you can learn those tools, it is where you can get deep personalization, where every email looks drastically different. And it looks like you legitimately spent 30 minutes crafting this email after researching them, their website, their social media pages, their job boards, everything, and then wrote a handcrafted email. So that's like the A level of copy. And then third is lists. How do you get high quality lists? The nice thing about lists today, you used to have to pay $1 or more for most people through like Zoom infos of the world. That's not the case anymore. You can get high quality lists, I should say, for pennies, but you have to know where to find it. So those are the three things: list, copy, deliverability, if you want to get to email market fit.
Okay. So I'm going to dive deeper into some of these things. So you mentioned a couple different softwares that you might have to get familiar with. Now, is that all a part of your particular platform that if I went through you, I wouldn't need to get familiar with those and I wouldn't need to have to worry about customizing specifically each individual email?
For our do-it-yourself offering, which is typically for the early stage company because it's the most budget conscious offering, we get you set up on a tool called Instantly.ai. It's a phenomenal tool. There's really three big cold email softwares out there. Instantly is a great one. You can get lists through there. You can send your emails through there. You can manage all the inboxes through there too. So it's a really good tool. So that's like the most basic version. If you just want to, take the 101 level course in cold email, that's that version of it. Just get on instantly.ai. We help you with deliverability, copy, training, all that stuff. That's the basic. If you're like, look, I don't want to learn this stuff and I want to use tools like I mentioned earlier, Clay, Octave, a tool called Email Bison. That's where we just handle everything. All you have to worry about is showing up to the meetings that we book for you and making the sales.
Okay, so then that's great for those that are just getting started who maybe just want to, test the waters to see if this is even going to work. Now, let's say those that are kind of maybe in the early but like mid level and they're like, I'm starting to get some customers or I'm starting to get some traction. I have a little bit more budget. What would you recommend them doing and what kind of services that provide them?
Yeah, for us, it's really simple. Like to be a full service client of ours, it's really as black or white as what number of sales meetings leads to a customer. What is your average deal size? So what's your ACV from that customer? And then what's your lifetime value? So for example, like let's say you're paying us, let's just say $50,000 a year to get you, let's call it 50 meetings in a year, just to use easy math here. So you
Mm-hmm.
pay us 50 grand a year. We get you 50 meetings a year. Do you close five of those? Do you close 10 of those? Do you close one of those? Do you close 20 of those? If you close one of those and a deal is $100,000 and your lifetime value is $300,000, it's easy for the math equation to make sense. If you close five deals, but those five deals only lead to $8,000 of revenue, it's not going to make sense for us. So really, it's just how many meetings tend to lead to a customer. So understanding your sales process and your sales cycle and just your sales numbers in general, and then understanding what's your deal size look like, because it really should just be a math equation. Like there's nothing really, it shouldn't be anything too gray about it.
Okay. So if the numbers work out as to what your average conversion rate is and how much those conversion rates are coming to, that's really going to say whether or not this even makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. That's why for us, our full service tends to be for companies that are further along on their product market fit journey, and for companies that sell a higher average deal size product. Like some of our customers, they sell deals that are a few $100,000. So if they don't make a deal for 7, 8, 9 months, that's normal for them. But if they can crack 1, 2, 3 deals a year, they're making a ton of money from our services. So the higher your ACV is, the higher likelihood you're going to be a good fit for us.
Got it. No, that makes total sense. Now, you mentioned a little bit about you teaching classes. Do you still teach classes? And if so, what kind of classes are you teaching?
I don't. It was through a program called Eureka. It was built to help small business owners. And then a company called Zen Business ended up acquiring them, I don't know, about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, maybe. And I love doing it. It was great. I love entrepreneurs. I've always just, you know, had a real admiration for people that are willing to take the dive. So it was a course on entrepreneurship. So we would teach, I don't know, 12, 13 different classes on different phases of entrepreneurship, from strategy to sales to financials. So I love doing it. But no, I don't do it anymore. It was a lot of work though. I give you professors a lot of credit because it is a ton of work. And there were some days where I would teach a few classes in a day and I was just exhausted. So it definitely takes a lot out of you. And for me, it's it's really tough sometimes to coach entrepreneurs because you see how much blood, sweat, and tears
Mm-hmm.
people put into it. And at the end of the day, there's only so much you can do to help.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so it really takes a lot out of you mentally. So I love doing it. I love the people I worked with. I still keep in touch with some of them, but it definitely takes a lot out of you. So I give you a lot of credit, Mallory, for the good work that you and so many other good professors do.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to get your thoughts and your opinions on if I'm a young professional and I'm looking to be an entrepreneur. I'm either looking to buy real estate or maybe start a business. If you were to look at your earlier days as an entrepreneur, what are some things that you wish you would have done differently, and what are some things that you found were pretty successful?
The things I did that was most successful, I'll start with that, was one of my favorite quotes is perseverance and spirit have done wonders in all ages. George Washington said that way back in the day. And the reason why I say that is because when you're young, and there's so many really smart young people, but the reality is that if you're 22 years old and you get offended by this, that's okay. When you're a little bit older, you'll know what I mean. Is we're dumb. We're dumb when we're 22, and that's good, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that because experience teaches us things. And when I was 22 years old, I was a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed entrepreneur. I was, billionaire or bust when I was starting my first tech company, having no idea what I was walking into. And that was a great thing. Because if I did know the crap I was going to have to go through, there's a good chance I would have taken that six-figure job instead of taking starting my own business the first year, not paying myself a dollar, going into a bunch of debt, then taking the bare minimum salary when we did raise money for my first tech startup to just get basically the crap beat out of me for 4 years before having an exit that no one dreams of when they start a company. So being dumb, I think, is okay. But the one thing I always did well was throughout me being, dumb, for lack of a better word, was I always had a smile on my face and willing to persevere through it and not willing to get in the mud when you easily could. The only reason why my business partner and I are still working together, one of the reasons my business partner and I are still working together now after a decade, was because when what hit the fan, I didn't turn my back on him. He didn't turn my back on me. There was a time we technically had 5 co-founders in my first startup. It was me and my business partner that we ended with. So as you can imagine, there was a lot of times we could have gotten the mud. But
Mm-hmm.
every time one of those situations happened, it was how do I take the lesson from this, the learning, and the high road. So that was the thing I probably always did best because from there you just learn, you get a little better, and you can't be afraid to make mistakes. In terms of things I wish I did differently, um, I would have built. And look, I don't have any regrets because like everyone says, like you wouldn't be where you are today if you didn't make some of the mistakes you had. But in terms of
Yeah.
like a tangible thing I'd encourage anyone to do was I got this advice as I was starting to sell my first startup. And I would have sold it for a lot more money if I did this thing better from the beginning, which is to build to sell from the start. Build your business with the intention of selling it. Because if you do that, number one, you'll most likely have a sellable asset, which is a good thing to have. And
Mhm.
two, if you don't want to sell it, your business is probably able to thrive and succeed at a greater length than if you didn't have a sellable asset. But you got to build your business to sell it from the start. I didn't do a good enough job of that in my first business. But with this tech startup, that's what I've been focused on. Or with this email marketing agency, that's what I've been focused on from the start.
No, that makes total sense. And I think it's important to note like, if you are starting a business, you have to be able to take yourself out of the business as well. And can your business be self sustaining and continue running if you are not, the main cog that turns the wheels? And so it's putting in the right processes, putting in the right procedures so that, you want to take a vacation and you want to go to Hawaii for a month, the business will still be able to run because you've built it up to be self-sustaining.
I love that point. And that's a huge thing is systems. Systems, systems, systems. It is really easy, especially for people that start businesses, because you tend to be more like, I'll handle it, I'll handle it, I'll handle it. And that was always my problem. And I still have to fight that problem today, but it's always, you know what, I'll just come in on the weekend, I'll spend a few hours doing that myself. No worries, I got it. I'll take the 15 minutes to do this thing. Don't worry, I got it. I'll take the 7 minutes to do this. Don't worry, I got it. But that doesn't actually add any long-term value to you. So I always encourage any entrepreneur, young or old, to focus, especially now. We all know what's going on with AI, and most of us, I think, see where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
AI can replace a lot of jobs today. In a year, it's going to be a lot more, and soon it's going to be almost every job can be replaced by AI. But we will always need humans to lead AI in the right direction. So, as any entrepreneur, I'd be thinking all about systems, automation, leveraging delegation, overseas talent. How do you find great talent from all over the world for pennies on the dollar versus what you pay in the US? And oh, by the way, the quality doesn't drop unless you have good systems. And then powering all that through using smart AI and building real AI driven systems. So if you could do those things, you could be a very successful entrepreneur. And that's one of the benefits that a lot of young people have today. It's like you're in the weeds of AI better than a lot of, people older than you are able to be. So you can leverage that, use that to your advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Adam, a question I always ask all my guests: do you have any books that you are currently reading or recommend for young entrepreneurs or those looking to grow and enhance their business?
Probably my most recommended book for entrepreneurs is what I mentioned earlier about building to sell. There's a great book called Built to Sell. And basically, it takes you along a fictional journey of, I think it's an accounting firm, where they take this asset that was not built to sell and turn it into a sellable asset. It's, I think, a phenomenal book for any new entrepreneur to read. Because again, if you can build a business that is worth buying, you can be wildly successful. And I bought my first business last year. I bought a newsletter business with about 5,000 subscribers on it. It's a digital nomad newsletter. Me being kind of a digital nomad, I was interested in it. And we bought the business, and we took it from 5,000 subscribers to 250,000 subscribers before selling the business in December of 2024. And going through that process, even of just taking almost a distressed asset that
Mm-hmm.
had an opportunity, rebuilding all the systems, starting to bring in revenue for it, growing the subscriber base, and then packaging it up and selling it for 19x or 17x, whatever the exact amount was from what we bought the purchase for, was a heck of an experience. So I really encourage anyone to read the book Built to Sell, because if you can learn how to build, grow, or buy, build, and sell assets, man, you can make a lot of money.
Yeah, no, that's a great piece of advice too. Okay, so last thing, what is one thing that you would tell entrepreneurs out there as your kind of, final words of wisdom?
Don't be afraid to step on your own feet. Like, again, going back to what I said earlier, is you're going to make a lot of mistakes when you're an entrepreneur, period.
Mm-hmm.
Period. Like the best, it's like in Major League Baseball. Like in baseball, if you get out 70% of the time, you get hits 30% of the time, you're going to be in the Hall of Fame. Business is very similar. Like nobody knows every answer. So it's okay to make mistakes, especially when you're young and you don't have the experience yet that you eventually will have. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, but when you do, own up to them, accept the lesson, and just keep it moving. Because again, That's the difference between an entrepreneur and somebody who decides to not take the entrepreneurial journey. You're taking the path less traveled. So you have to accept there's going to be a lot of mistakes. You're going to embarrass yourself sometimes. You're going to trip over your own feet sometimes, but that's okay because you're going to look back on it 10 years from now and you're going to say, wow, I was such a pup, but thank goodness I powered through that because now look at where I am.
Yeah, absolutely. Adam, it's been a real pleasure having you on here. And so for those of our audience who may be interested in learning more about your company and about the services you provide, where do you suggest that they go?
You can check out our website at eocworks.com.
Perfect. Awesome. Adam, again, thank you so much. And that's going to wrap it up for another episode of Inspire Wealth. I am Prof M out. And for those who want a more hands-on learning experience, check out our online courses at inspirewealtheducation.com. Whether you're just starting out or looking to expand your investment portfolio, I've created step-by-step guides and resources to help you achieve your financial goals. So hit that subscribe button and let's start building your wealth one episode at a time.